Helter Skelter, two words that defined one of the darkest and most infamous chapters in American criminal history. Two words that sold millions of books, shaped a sensational trial, and convinced the world it understood exactly what the Manson family was and why they killed. For nearly 6 decades, that has been the accepted narrative. And for a long time, I believed it too. Then I started asking different questions. I spent 3 years researching and writing my book, The Manson Family: More to the Story, because I believed the real truth was buried underneath that narrative. I discovered that before the verdicts, before the trials, before the arrests in Death Valley, and long before the killings in the summer swelter of 1969, they were just young people in a turbulent era. Seekers, drifters, believers, drawn toward something that felt, in those early days, like the most beautiful thing they've ever experienced. This podcast is that story. Dennis Carl Wilson was chasing life, seeking to soothe his inner torment. He was the first to jump onto new fads and the last to let go of failures. Dennis was also an adrenaline junkie. When the Beach Boys performed in New York City a few years later, the drummer snuck onto the construction site of what was to become the World Trade Center late at night, climbed to the top of the scaffolding, and swung by his arms at horrifying heights, thrilled by the danger. There was no height or depth he wasn't willing to plumb to find salvation. Drag racing along the strip, picking up hitchhikers, eventually diving into the bottom of a bottle of whiskey. Wilson was already showing signs in 1968 that he was destined to unravel many of the good things he had built in his life. He also sought to soothe his inner demons through meditation and spirituality. Dennis was one of several rock stars in the late 60s drawn to the pursuit of enlightenment. Members of both the Beach Boys and the Beatles were among those involved with the Indian mystic Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, founder of the Transcendental Meditation movement. Charlie wasn't interested in Eastern mysticism, although he borrowed from it and other practices. In her 2018 memoir, Reflection, from PEASENHALL Press, LYNETTE wrote,
Charlie thought it strange that so many Christians and Jews would migrate to other religions. To him, religion was indigenous. It was as unrealistic to wrap up in a sari and call oneself a Hindu as it was to put on feathers and call oneself an American Indian.
She also witnessed Manson rekindle Dennis's music talents.
One morning, Dennis stepped into the living room, sat down at the piano, and for the first time since we had arrived, played some of his own music. His music was beautiful when he put his heart into it, and that's what was attractive about him.
If Charlie admired Bobby Beausoleil, a younger and perhaps more talented version of himself, he was that much more enamored of Wilson. His desires for a record deal grew into a pursuit for the kind of lifestyle that Dennis and his friends were living. If the world were changing, as it appeared to be, didn't that give up-and-comers like him hope for inclusion? Manson had taken the notion that the music world was characterized by class fluidity, that talent and charisma and commitment would be rewarded. But these Wilson brothers, these children of Doris Day, and ventriloquist Edgar Bergen were not so eager to see the gates opened to all freaky comers, wrote author Jeffrey Melnick, professor of American Studies at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, in his 2018 book, Creepy Crawling, Charles Manson and the Many Lives of America's Most Infamous Family, from Arcade Publishing. Dennis provided everything that the family desired. He paid for Sadie to go to the dentist. He footed the bill for penicillin shots when everyone got the clap, gonorrhea. He let the family stay at his home, eat his food, use his drugs, swim in his pool, drive his cars, fuck his friends, and even gave Charlie a couple of the Beach Boys' gold records. The only time he balked was when Charlie showed up with a milking cow. Otherwise, Wilson indulged the wizard and his many whims. He thought Manson had a canny wisdom and truthfulness that soothed his own troubled soul. But Charlie soon realized that he couldn't stay in Wilson's good graces if the family remained in his home, especially with a crying baby underfoot. He sent Mary, Valentine Michael, and several women north to Mendocino County. They were to stay a couple of months there and recruit as many young men as possible. In her book, Child of Satan, Child of God, published in 1977 by Logos International, Sadie wrote,
Mary, Pat, Ella, Stephanie, and I headed north in the old black school bus. We rented a house in the little town of Philo. It seemed that I was in charge, although others may have disputed this.
The women drove first to San Francisco, where they visited the free clinic. Valentine Michael had a candida infection in his mouth, passed from mother to son during delivery. As the girls left Frisco, they scored some acid and grass before driving to Philo. Meanwhile, crazy Dean Morehouse showed up at Wilson's. The acid trip Charlie sent the ex-preacher on the previous fall caused a dramatic personality change in the man. He wasn't preaching the Bible anymore and no longer looked the part of the devout minister. He'd grown his balding hair out and wore an untidy beard. He came looking, once again, for Ruth Ann, but after he saw Wilson's palatial estate, he seemed fine with just squatting there and seeing his daughter from time to time. Morehouse became a fixture at the house, a weird gnome with his gut hanging out, ogling the hot Sunset Strip babes that liked to visit the famous drummer who lived there. At the end of May, Dennis Wilson found himself on Sunset Boulevard without a ride home. He stuck out his thumb, like Pat and Ella had done a few weeks before. A 1935 Dodge pickup truck pulled over, and the driver offered him a lift. Dennis got in and began talking with the man, a 22-year-old from Texas. Again, Dennis asked the man if he would like to visit his home in the Pacific Palisades. No idea, however, if he offered him milk and cookies. The Texan was Charles Denton Watson, who moved to Los Angeles the summer before. Born December 1945 in Farmersville, Texas, same town as American war hero Audie Murphy, Charles spent his entire childhood in this small town near Dallas. His parents owned a gas station. His cousin was the local sheriff. Watson had been an honors student, active in the Future Farmers of America program. He played football in high school and was editor of his high school newspaper. He later pledged a fraternity at North Texas State University. But in college, Charles began to use drugs and alcohol. He was also quite a ladies' man. He suddenly took on a devil-may-care attitude that didn't sit well with his staid Christian folks. His freshman year, Watson broke into his former high school and stole several typewriters as a fraternity initiation. In his 1978 autobiography, Will You Die for Me, published by Fleming H. Revell, Watson explained,
Part of the fraternity initiation was a scavenger hunt. My partner and I had to find, among other things, 4 typewriters. Through the beer-soaked fog, I remembered the typing class at Farmersville High School with row on row of battered Royals. Getting them was easy. Break the glass, open the door, giggle a lot, and shush each other boozily. It seemed extremely funny. The next day, with a throbbing hangover, 4 typewriters, and the certainty of being caught, it seemed extremely stupid. Rather than have them find out from someone else, I went to my parents myself. They took it hard, and as we drove into McKinney, the county seat, to talk to a lawyer, they couldn't have been any more upset if I'd committed murder.
In January 1967, Watson got a job with Braniff Airlines at Dallas Love Field Airport as a baggage handler. He used his employee miles to regularly fly himself and his girlfriends to Los Angeles, sometimes visiting Southern California fraternities and indulging in the West Coast drug culture. That August, he moved to LA. It is rumored that Watson arrived in California with more than $4,000, perhaps evidence that he was dealing drugs even before leaving Texas, since that amount of money seems much higher than a baggage handler might earn in 8 months. Once out west, Watson enrolled at Cal State Los Angeles, but never attended class. He rented an apartment in Silver Lake with a roommate and began selling wiglets, or wig pieces, that gals fashionably wore those days to give the appearance of longer, fuller hair. He'd walk along the Sunset Strip, offering women the chance to buy a really cheap wiglet to get them into the shop, where senior sales staff would attempt to upsell them a more expensive piece. Charles got a kickback from each wig sold, but that wasn't enough. With his roommate, Rich, he opened his own wig shop on Sunset Boulevard, Love Locks. He was also dealing marijuana. Within 2 to 3 months, everything was going to pot, and the wig shop shut down. A car accident in early '68 badly damaged his knee, a disability Watson later maximized to get out of his scheduled Army physical. He was heading to the beach a few weeks after the injury to chill out when he ran into Wilson hitchhiking. Dennis told Watson about the harem of hippie girls living at his pad and about their guru, Charlie. For a moment, Watson was confused upon arrival at Wilson's house. The first person he saw was a fat, balding man. That turned out to be Dean Morehouse. Watson met Charlie a few minutes later. The Texan saw the bevy of girls around the diminutive Manson and liked what he saw. There was a chance to sell drugs. There was more than a chance to get laid. Plus, he could hang out with superstars. Watson virtually moved into Dennis's home, sometimes bunking with Dean in the pool house.
He was so personable,
Lynette Fromme remembered.
He could have sold homes, cars, magazines, or anything but wigs on Southern California beaches.
Dean later took Watson on his first acid trip, although he'd been smoking grass and hash for months and was introduced to speed earlier. Not long after, the young man tried cocaine for the first time. Shortly after Watson showed up, another Texan arrived at Wilson's house, courtesy of Morehouse.
Preacher Dean's new faith had blessed him with a beatific smile,
recalled Lynette.
His full white beard and ministerial history lent him influence as a psychedelic spiritual guide. During the next months, he made several trips north to court, sometime with Charles Watson, and once brought back a car full of college-age kids. One of them was Brooks.
Brooks Poston, 19, moved to California the year before. When he met Manson, he was high on acid and hallucinated that Charlie was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. Poston donated his mother's credit card to the family and continued to live at Dennis's house through the summer, helping with landscaping. Brooks was a talented musician who was thoroughly indoctrinated by Charlie's rap, although allegedly he was not a fan of the orgies. Charlie now had a sizable number of men, Bruce, Watson, Poston, and, of course, Wilson, for his women to attend. It wasn't a heartbreak when the Mendocino gals left or when he lost Dee Dee. Her parents discovered her drug use and cut off her credit cards. Dee Dee Shaw never was a full-time member of the family, but Angela Lansbury's money and fame got Charlie interested in the Children of the Stars. He wanted a whole gaggle of them. Dina Martin, daughter of the Rat Pack singer, later testified that she met Manson at one of Wilson's parties. Charlie gave her a ring and asked her to join his family. She declined. Lucky girl. Manson didn't like feeling indebted to Dennis, and by June knew they'd overstayed their welcome. It was bad karma to stay too long in any one place. After the rift over the cow, Charlie decided to move his family out of Wilson's estate so he could preserve his relationship with the drummer. He made arrangements to relocate everyone to Spahn Ranch. Thank you for listening to the Manson family, more to the story. In this podcast, we focus on peeling back the layers, one chapter at a time, in order to demystify the family and destroy the myths that leave us in the stone-cold dark. This is H. Allegra Lansing. The story of the family and the murders of 1969 have always been more than a crime story. This is a human story, and there is an imperative to understand it, because the vulnerabilities that drew those young people into darkness are not unique to them. They belong to all of us. In our first 12 episodes, we followed Charles Manson from his birth to a teenage mother in Cincinnati, through 2 decades of reform schools, jails, and federal prisons, to his 1967 release into the heart of the summer of love. We watched him gather his family, one lost soul at a time. Mary, Lynette, Patricia, Susan, and the others, moving from Haight-Ashbury to the road to the beaches of Southern California, finding his way into the orbit of Dennis Wilson and the music industry he was convinced owed him fame. We are taking a short hiatus before returning on Monday, September 7th, with the next 12 weekly episodes, beginning with Home is Where You're Happy. Discover the world that existed at Spahn Ranch before the Manson family arrived. A living, breathing community of working people, animals, pipe dreamers, and loyal friends who had gathered around a blind old rancher and made something that felt, against all odds, like home. The history books remember Spahn Ranch as a place of darkness, but the people who loved it knew it first as something else entirely, and no one who wasn't there will ever fully understand what was lost. During the hiatus, I hope you will join me for my new limited webcast series, House on Fire, Patty Hearst, the SLA, and the Seduction of Revolution. 13 episodes exploring another group of idealistic young people who believed they had found the truth about what was wrong with America and the catastrophic price everyone paid for that belief. Episodes are released on Wednesdays and Fridays for the next 6 weeks. Plus, be sure to subscribe to More to the Story, Crime, Culture, and Consequence at YouTube for additional new content each week related to the Manson family during the podcast hiatus. This series is drawn from my book, The Manson Family, More to the Story, published by Story Stratosphere, and is based on historical records, contemporary reporting, and archival research. Citations for this episode can be found in the show notes. All writing and most narration by yours truly. Theme music is Masked by Silent Partner, with additional scoring from Echoes of Time by Kevin MacLeod.